Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Syed Farooq Hassan is back with a new episode of Sky is the Limit. You know, I am always trying to unearth the jewels of Pakistan. Those lost jewels, those unsung heroes. And I do a lot of effort to unearth them, to uncover them. Today, I happen to be sitting with a living legend. He is a painter and a poet of international repute. He hails from Shakkarpadiya, which is an area in Islamabad. So he's one of the native Islamabadites. So we're going to ask him about that also. He has more than 60 solo exhibitions to his credit in Pakistan and internationally. He has more than 3,000 poems to his credit. He's a recognized, accomplished artist, painter, poet. He has a gold medal in degree of journalism from a very, very reputed institution in the United States of America. He served in Pakistan Tourism Development Corporation also as the #2 Deputy Managing Director, and he also headed the Pakistan National Council of the Arts as the DG, Director General. So he has a lot of accomplishments to his credit. Let's meet the man himself, Raja Changes Sultan. Assalamu alaikum, Raja sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you very much for giving us time. What a pleasure to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure for me. Really.
You have done so much work, and specifically with respect to endangered species, endangered animals, you've written so much. In prose, in poetry, and that's something which everyone appreciates, and you're still doing it. For
yeah.
That. Before we start the interview, you are probably the first guest that I'm interviewing, and I've interviewed a lot of people in this program, who actually hails from Islamabad, because Islamabad is a place where everyone is a settler. Everyone came from different cities and settled here, but very rare to find hardcore native Islamabadite. So before we start the program, tell me, how was the original Islamabad before it became Islamabad?
Very different, really. People were a lot simpler. They had a set of values, and they weren't that extensive that people couldn't follow them. Problems were fewer, because in those days it wasn't as if a solution was around the corner for every problem you had. So people lived what they had, and if somebody died, they'd say, "Bada bukhar tha," got a fever and he died. They wouldn't go into the details of cancers or this or that, because knowledge wasn't as extensive as it is today. So consequently, life generally was a lot simpler.
Very simple.
Yeah, you didn't have air conditioning. Instead, you had ventilators, or you had doors open, or you had fans that had somebody pulling the string, and the cloth fan would wave, and
wow.
You'd have a quality of some coolness.
But the atmosphere was cooler at that time as compared
No.
Was it the same?
That's a myth, really.
That's a myth.
Islamabad before, or Shakkarpadiya and these areas before Islamabad were extremely dry. And the reason for that was that people didn't have sui gas in order to, use in the kitchen.
Okay.
And wherever they found a piece of wood that could be utilized for burning, they used it for burning. And that's why all these hills that you see, which are lavish and green now, were extremely barren and arid all through the years. And in the summers, you had breeze, that you could call it a breeze or whatever, which they used to call Lu, and Lu meant that, you know, that breeze could literally burn you up.
Hot air.
It was that hot,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So things were very different, really.
Right.
And the greening of Islamabad, or the greening of Pakistan, actually began when people shifted from using wood for cooking and
to gas.
for home utilization, and replaced that with gas.
Okay. So you were born here. You grew up here.
Yeah.
In Chakrapadia.
Well, I was born in Sargodha because my father was in service.
Okay.
But obviously,
You spent your childhood here.
Home base was Chakrapadia.
Very good. And were you here when it was declared that Islamabad is going to be the capital of Pakistan?
Yeah, very much so.
And what was the sentiment here? How did the people?
Well, I think the sentiment was more felt by my father than kids like us, really. For us, it is, you know, okay, if you're not here, we're in Pindi, or if you're not in Pindi, we'll be somewhere else.
Okay.
But obviously, the elders in the family felt that they lost their roots, they lost their history, they lost their entire heritage. And consequently, wherever they were adjusted, they weren't really very pleased about it.
Yeah, obviously, because you know, whenever you create something big, there has to be a change.
Yeah,
it's inevitable.
In our case, it was slightly different because we were, I guess, my father was with the Fatma Jinnah Muslim League.
Okay.
And Ayub Khan's regime didn't take too kindly to that.
Okay,
so our family got it in the neck, really, because most members of them who owned lands out here, they did not get the
fair share or whatever they could. Fair enough.
What was due.
So you've written the Himalayan Odyssey also. I'm going to come to that also. But before that, please, I would like you to share your life journey. You know, who actually is Raja Changez Sultan? How did you become such an accomplished artist, poet? You know, like, was it something inborn, innate? Did you acquire it? Did you learn it? Who influenced you? Tell us about your early childhood.
I was fifth of 7 children, or eight children actually. And by the time the 4th one comes along, your parents stop worrying as to what you're doing or not doing.
That's a good one.
You become
one of the many.
One of the many, but not one of the people who were told to do this or do that.
You're on your own.
Yeah, by that time parents are a bit tired of doing that.
Yeah.
So I had all the freedom in the world, literally, to take any direction in life, whether it was at an early stage or at a later stage. Since there was nobody who had an input, I was a free man from the very start. I was perhaps good enough in my studies, so whether it is the convent or Lawrence College thereafter. We did okay work-wise, and I was one of 28,000 kids chosen from the Commonwealth who competed for certain scholarships for England.
Okay.
And you could go to any school of your choice. And the school I chose was Shrewsbury School.
In UK?
Yeah, UK. And Charles Darwin was also at Shrewsbury.
Wow.
So, and my son also ended up, and the two of us are writing poems on wildlife.
So the legacy continues.
So Charles Darwin would be quite pleased that, you know, someone...
The legacy is continuing. Yeah, no, but before that, so your early schooling was in Chakrapadia, Islamabad?
Well, maybe for a month or month and a half.
Okay.
With Taksi Duat and Kalam.
Yes.
This book, by the way, is called Chakrapadia.
Yeah.
Has the entire story.
Okay.
so you might enjoy it that
Yes,
way.
definitely. I will.
Yeah,
I will.
did attend school here for a few months.
Okay.
And then I ended up in the convent where my brother was studying near Wa, Hassan Abdal, Wa, that area.
And who had more influence on you when you were a kid? Like when you were growing up, your elder brother, one of your elder brothers, or your father? Who used to teach you and like groom you for that matter?
I don't think life went on that way for us, really.
Okay.
We looked up to our parents and we looked up to our elders and loved them immensely because they're wonderful people. You pick a bit of everything from all those around you. And in the end, what you assemble is very different from what they are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the stamp is the same, is the family. My father was a very, very fair and just kind of human being. I can just tell you one instance. When I applied for cadet college, Hassan Abdal, I did okay in the written test and in the interview. And they said that I had knock knee in medical exam. So consequently, they don't accept you, all right? But in my case, the principal made an exception, and he put my name on the roster as an accepted student for cadet college. Yeah, Hassan Abdal. And then my father sat me down and said, look, you're bright enough to be in any school of your choice. And if you take this, then somebody somewhere along the line will say ki ye safarish hai. And safarish is not really the way you need to go about your life. So I went back to the school with my elder brother and told the principal that, look, thank you, but no thanks.
I can't
not
accept
possible
it
because if the rule applies that people with knock knee can't be admitted, then why are you admitting me? He was a bit taken aback and said,
the first instance where someone is actually coming and saying himself that I don't want to be admitted. Okay.
So he wrote a letter to the principal in Lawrence College and said, here's a boy who stood first in the written and first in the interview. And we accepted him, but he's not accepting the offer.
Okay.
So consequently, recommend him highly for your institution.
Okay.
So I went to Lawrence College, and the principal said that no exam, no nothing for you.
You were accepted.
You just enter.
Lawrence College, Ghoda Gali.
Ghoda Gali, yeah.
Okay. Yes, I've heard a lot about that institution also.
Yeah, it's a wonderful institution.
It's a wonderful. When you came back from, did you get employed while you were studying there? Because your first job was in United Nations.
In England, no.
No.
In
you
England,
came back to Pakistan?
No, no.
After
I went from there to the States.
To the States.
I was the first foreigner ever to get the scholarship which I did to the US.
Okay.
Because it was basically meant for British students and British nationals. So my headmaster, for some reason, said that, look, I'd like to put your name for this particular scholarship because I think you'll be a good candidate for it.
Okay. Which discipline was that?
Yeah, that was again for math and physics.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
okay.
But in any case, it was one of the most lucrative scholarships you could ever get. So anyway, so I got that and I went off to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. And that's where poetry got into my bloodstream.
Okay.
And they seemed to both complement each other.
What was the inspiration? Like, how did it all start, the poetry part?
The inspiration actually came from my first summer job out there.
Okay, which was?
In the States, all the kids work.
Yes,
in
the summer job. Yeah.
And it was sitting behind a stupid desk in the placement office of Trinity College. And the job was, to be assistant to the director of placement and find jobs for people and stuff like that. But just the thought of sitting behind a desk and going through paperwork was enough to drive me to write something stupid. And the first poem I wrote was sitting on that desk, getting frustrated as hell as to what am I doing here. So I just showed it to one of the literature teachers at lunch, during the lunch interval. And he read that and he said, you know, you keep writing this wonderful stuff. So he sent that poem for some kind of recognition or whatever. And I got $500 for that poem.
And it was like a funny poem or a serious poem? Or
no, if you want, I can recite. It's a very short poem.
Yeah?
It's almost like mathematics.
Okay, please.
Because that's what I was studying.
Please.
It's called The Mirror.
The Mirror. That's
Mirror.
your first poem ever?
Yeah, first poem ever. When you look in a mirror, do you see your image or an image of your image? Okay.
Image of your?
Or an image of your image.
Of your image.
Or does your image see you or an image of you? Whatever the case, you see what's there, or what's there sees you. Between the two, there's a conspiracy.
Oh, wow.
So that conspiracy got me...
that conspiracy got you hooked on to poetry?
A bit of recognition, or you know, for a first poem or something. And then I thought, you know, I could write.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
That's your skill, yeah.
And, you know, the total and utter rubbish came for the next maybe 500,000 poems or whatever garbage that people write at that age.
So you were still studying and doing poetry?
Yeah, yeah.
And painting?
And painting.
Yeah, okay.
And then I realized that, you know, I better sharpen my craft, because with paints, it's easy. Here the paints and here's the canvas, and you work, and a teacher can guide you in a way. But with writing, you better know your words, and you better know what to do with sound and sense, because basically a poem is sound and sense. And consequently, I took a lot of courses in all kinds of creative writing, you know, things out there. And by the time the third year came around, I was one of 4 poets for the state of Connecticut, selected by a panel of the best poets in America.
Wow.
And from there onwards, you know, things changed. It was basically poetry and painting.
Okay. So you finished your degree?
Yeah, yeah.
And then?
My degree was in psychology at Trinity.
Wow.
But the painting and poetry defined my life.
Okay.
And I think I was 19 when I thought life for me was going to be 10 good poems and 10 good paintings. And that's enough to get on with things. And the problem that came about was that you never knew those 10 were still ahead of you or were behind you already. So the game just has to go on till the next phase up in heaven or hell or wherever.
So once you finished your degree from there, did you come back to Pakistan?
No.
You got you started
I sent
working?
12 poems to Columbia University, which had the best writing program in the world. And they accepted me on that, and they asked me to fill an application form. And I said, if these poems aren't good enough, there's no point in my filling out the application form.
Yeah.
So I never did. And they gave me a full scholarship and said, study.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
So I had a wonderful time really working with brilliant poets out there.
Okay.
And the kind of sharpening I needed with the tools, whether they're words or sounds, how to appreciate them and how to utilize in your own work. So that was a wonderful experience. You know, first MFA was in that, in creative writing. And all along, I was also attending the art school there.
Okay, okay.
So the combination was what did the trick.
All things were going good for you?
Yeah, they've always gone good. God's been exceptionally kind, really.
Alhamdulillah. So after that, what happened? Like you?
After that, I met a girl who I thought I'd like to marry. So I think I proposed to her the third day of meeting her. And she was a Pakistani girl who had come there to
study
as a Pakistan scholar to study journalism and then international affairs. And she had another year to spend out there, so I said, hell, you know, why don't I spend another year as well? And so I joined the journalism school, and that was also a wonderful experience. And the dean asked me, you know, why do you want to be, you already got a degree in writing, why do you need this? I said, you know, you're the guys who formulate opinion on the minds and leaders of today. So there's no harm in knowing a little of the world as well. All I know is poetry or painting, and they're two pure arts, basically. But one has to be worldly wise as well, and it wouldn't do me any harm. So at the end, when you know, I got their gold medal, so they said, okay, here's a chap who walked off the street just to study us, and he's walking off with this prize. But again, you know, it wasn't anything but God's kind, and
fair enough.
Things worked out that
Fair enough.
way.
Fair enough. And after that, you joined United Nations?
Yeah, from there.
Still being in States, you didn't come back to Pakistan, you joined United Nations?
No, not in the States, but I joined in Geneva.
In Geneva,
Yeah.
okay.
And that was for a couple of years. And by that time, my wife was also in the UN. And we decided that we'd love to be in Pakistan. And
you decided to move back?
For way too long, yeah.
Okay.
I could have taken American nationality 7 times, because in those days, after the 5th year, they'd offer that.
You were eligible to get nationality.
And I said, nothing doing.
I am a Pakistani
at
heart and mind, and I want to go back.
So with people like me, I love.
You came back to your roots. You wanted to come back to your roots. Fair enough.
The roots, and obviously, here's a country that was formed in a manner that people gave their life for it.
Yeah.
Our elders gave their life for it.
Absolutely.
And if we can't love our own country, who else is going to love it?
We have, obviously. We have to own it. This is our country, this is our identity.
Absolutely.
And this is our passion. Yeah. So before you come back to Pakistan, we need to take a short break, right, sir? Sure. And we viewers a very, very interesting conversation with the living legend, Raja Changes. Welcome back to Sky's the Limit. This is Syed Farooq Hassan in conversation, very, very interesting conversation with Raja Changes Sultan. So Raja Sahab, you decided to come back to Pakistan, come back to your roots, and you landed back in Islamabad?
Yeah, back in Islamabad.
Okay. And then leaving a very lucrative job, I'm sure it was at United Nations, coming back to Islamabad, did you have a plan, a backup plan, what you're going to do here?
Not really.
Not really.
You come back thinking that, all right, you know, I'm sure there's something you could do.
Okay. And then what did you do when you landed back?
Well, there's a friend of ours who knew the then establishment secretary, and he sent us straight to him. and they offered a job for the Foreign Office to my wife in Australia and me in Paris. And they said, you know, you're aptly qualified for these. So I said, well, you just got married and you want one to be in Australia and the other to be in Paris, and it's not going to work out. And we haven't come to Pakistan in order to be sent out again. So then said, all right, you know,
we'll look for something else.
Hardly anything we can do for you. Then around that time, there was some advertisements that my wife saw in Karachi about jobs in PTDC. In
Pakistan Tourism Development Corporation.
Pakistan Tourism. And I said, that sounds fun. So anyway, she sent my resume there, and they called me for an interview, sent a return ticket, come and be interviewed.
Okay, and you went?
Yeah, I went, and I thought I'd really enjoy it. And the first question I was asked is, you're 29, and this is a job for someone who's between 45 and 55.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? And I said, well, that's not for me to feel, it's for you guys who sent a ticket to me to come for this interview.
I'm sure you must have seen something, yeah.
So if you haven't seen my resume, which is in front of you, you would have known I'm 29, so why send the ticket? So from that point onwards, no, we need somebody with an imagination, with the concept of things, and blah, blah. And yeah, they sitting in a joint secretary's post at the age of 29 or thereabouts. And I'm sure I made a fair bit of mistakes, because when you come from the outside, you feel that
you're not too accustomed with the culture. And,
yeah, you're kind of a bit too uncompromising.
Perfectionist.
Right? Yeah, a bit.
To a certain extent.
To an extent that,
yeah.
To an extent a bit stupid, because any set of people you work with, if you know their psyche and mentality, it's much better to get to a point where you respect that,
yeah.
and you give them the respect that's due.
Yep.
And I think I was a bit off the first couple of years.
Okay.
But it didn't take me long to learn that humility takes you much further,
yes,
than any streak of arrogance.
Absolutely.
Whether it's on knowledge or whatever.
Absolutely.
So my life changed. You know, I really had a wonderful, absolutely wonderful time working for the tourism departments. And couldn't have been better. It was the best learning experience for me.
And your love for the animals and endangered species, I'm sure had something to do with this tourism department?
No, that came much later.
It came much later.
The first was obviously seeing such beautiful places.
Yeah.
And such absolutely remarkable people. 99% of this country has some of the warmest, most friendly people on God's earth. And those were not the days when tourism was replaced with terrorism. That came much later. With all places, whether it's here or Balochistan or even the remotest parts of this country, people had a level of decency and dignity about them, which I really appreciated. And I wish our future generations thereafter had retained a bit of that. But I think we've lost a lot in the process of entering the modern world. So, but in any case, yeah, you live with what there is. But such magnificent places that could be developed for friendly tourism of all kinds.
Yeah, I think a lot of emphasis is being placed over the last couple of years on tourism, because that could be one avenue for Pakistan to earn a lot of foreign direct investment.
Yeah, the emphasis has been on tourism in the past as well, but nobody provided the funds for any kind of
You
development.
need to have a concrete plan in place
Yeah,
to execute those
Zulfikar
ideas.
Ali Bhutto had a vision, but he never had the time actually to fund it. Benazir, I think, was too caught up in her first couple of times.
Yeah.
The first Prime Minister that actually supported and funded tourism was Nawaz Sharif. And since that time, he's still the only Prime Minister who actually supported this sector.
Yep. Okay.
And he gave funds up front. It took him, I think, 3 minutes of a first meeting, and he said, forget the meeting, what you're saying is that you guys need money. So he told the Treasury to do the needful. And then a lot of these hotels and places came into being.
So from PTDC to PNCA, how did that transformation come across?
There's a minister, Tressler, I don't know if you remember.
Yes, Mr. Tressler, SK Tressler or something?
Yeah. He was the minister for a while, and we'd been asked to prepare a tourism plan for Musharraf. Musharraf Saab was obviously the chief executive at that time.
Yeah.
And a certain point came in a presentation that the minister was making and then the secretary, where the 14 or 15 generals sitting around felt that tourism should not be supported, and especially the publicity and promotion aspect. And then I said, shit, oops, sorry, I guess this is a bit too much. So I said, do you mind if I say something? And Musharraf looked around and said,
who is this gentleman?
So I said, yeah, go ahead. So then I think for about 4 or 5 minutes I talked about what tourism actually needed and how the image of a country is 80% of what attracts tourists to a place.
Yep.
So if you don't work on that aspect of it and don't spend in promotion and publicizing what you have, people are not going to know you.
You have to retrain.
If they don't know you, your hotels and everything would remain empty. So what's the point? Anyway, those 5 minutes just turned the entire meeting around, and the secretary and the minister breathed a sigh of relief. And from there onwards, it was smooth sailing. So after the meeting, the minister comes over and says, you shouldn't be sitting where you are. We'd like you to head this organization. And
Pakistan National Council of the Arts.
So that's how the very next day ended up there.
And all this time your painting and your poetry was continuing?
Yeah.
It never stopped?
No.
Okay. And then 4 years in PNCA?
Yeah, 4.5, 5.
Any major movers and shakers kind of a move there in PNCA? Anything that you did there?
Well, I think the maximum number of visual arts exhibitions that took place. And they weren't just in Islamabad. Those exhibitions were here in Peshawar, in Quetta, in Karachi, in Lahore. So I decentralized the thing to the extent possible.
Okay.
And made sure that the artists or the artist community was given the regard and respect that they deserved.
That they deserved, yeah. Okay.
In those days, it was quite common that every week the president, Musharraf Saab, would have people come over and have musicians play for once a week or something.
Okay.
and the Director General was always asked to come in and be there to supervise or see or something like that. So the first time we sent musicians, I didn't go, and this principal secretary asked, "Ji sahab, aap kyun nahi aaye?" मैं कहा बात सुने, till such time that you guys give adequate regard to the artist community, till that time I'm not going to be coming. यहाँ से हमारे म्यूजिशियंस जाते थे, उन बेचारे के ड्रम्स तक वो कई दफ़ा खोल के देखते थे, जी इनमें क्या है.
So the musicians were checked thoroughly before they entered the president's house.
Checked thoroughly, and the kind of remunerations that they were given wouldn't even satisfy, a person making the month, get through a month. And I said, till these things are rectified, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be coming. In the 4 years that I headed, 4.5, PNCA, I never went a single time.
Okay. Okay. All right.
If you wish to do justice to your job, then you have to have a conscience. And my conscience did not allow me to bow before power without making the point that what's needed is this.
Fair enough.
In other countries, in India, they really respect their artists.
Yep.
And all over the world, I went for an exhibition of mine to Austria, the first exhibition I did out there. It was at the Winter Palace. And they kept saying, "Maestro, Maestro, Maestro." And I kept looking around, who is this
what are they referring
Maestro? And they were referring to me because I was the artist, I guess, being exhibited.
Fair enough.
And I got shocked. I said, there's so much regard and respect that the artist deserves, or according to...
And it should be given to the artist.
Yeah. And here you've got the best musicians on God's earth, and you've got so many other very, very talented, brilliant people. And they're not even given the respect that you'd give to somebody off the street.
Fair enough. You also got an honorary doctorate degree.
Yeah.
How did that come across?
The college that I went to in the States.
Trinity College?
Trinity, yeah. After, I don't know, they just thought that, okay, here's somebody who's been an artist and a poet and from all over, or stuck to that.
So they recognized your talent and they awarded an honorary doctorate degree.
And as the commemoration speaker for that year as well.
That's a big honor.
Yeah.
Tell us about your books, The Himalayan Odyssey we can start with, and any other notable that you would want to mention.
Books are funny because it's poetry, and the poetry touches literally on every aspect of life that you have. Sometimes the best poems come from the most mundane aspects in life, and sometimes you labor over a lot of information before you write something. I have books that go through the dire range. There's a book called Footsteps of the Hour, and in that there's a poem addressed to every single leader of Pakistan, from Quaid-e-Azam to the present, and it takes stock of what they've done and what they've not done, and if they had to pay penance for something, is it for their deeds, or is it for their neglect of that which needed to be addressed? And it's not with any kind of rancor or a feeling that one has to get back at them, but it's to see what really was their reason for being in that office, what was the reason for their downfall, and how people could learn a lesson from what these leaders have done.
Fair enough.
And how future leaders ought to look at, what they aim for.
Okay.
Sometimes if you put the country ahead of yourself, you have that decency, maybe people would have respect for you.
Yeah.
If you put yourself way ahead of the country, and the country is at your service, there's something drastically wrong with that concept.
Fair enough.
So our leaders, by and large, have been forced into situations where humility hasn't been their
driving
real
factor.
forte. Yeah.
So, while touching on the same subject of your writings, how did your passion for the endangered species and the animals, how was that highlighted, and when did that come across?
Oh, I think that began quite late in life, really. About 12 years back, my son, who's also a poet, probably a better poet than me, both of us were just discussing and said, look, we share the world with all kinds of wonderful animals, and we don't pay adequate regard to them. And he said, well, Dad, what do you want to do about it? Okay, let's begin by writing at least 50 poems on them. And there's so many endangered species, and the world would be a lot poorer when all of them vanish. So that's how it began. And when we got to 50, I said, it's really not enough. And let's do another 50 and see what happens. And that 50 hasn't finished, and we're in 2096 pages now.
I think the largest book ever.
I think it's the largest collection on wildlife poetry in any language, anywhere, because I really haven't seen a single writer who might have done more than 10 or 12 or 15 poems.
So it could go to the Guinness Book of World Records also.
It should, but I wish I'm so bad at these things today.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not really important whether it goes or not.
Okay.
What is important is that future generations can benefit from
the utility, basically.
this type of thing, because they've done a lot of work in documentaries. They've done a lot of work in all kinds of other literature about animals, but nobody has touched, taken poetry as an instrument to promote the cause of wildlife. So here, then it saw the Darwin aspect too, and I said, okay, the least we can do is pay a little homage to...
That's an amazing effort. They say that an artist depicts his mind, his thought process, his expression through his art. And in your case, we see an amazing collection of paintings. What has been your forte?
The main reason, or really, I work on themes. Right? The very first theme that attracted me was when I was working in a mental hospital, and it was how people there have so many personalities all rolled in one, and sometimes they can't come to grips with them. And there's a part of them pulling them one way, there's another part pulling them another way. And in the end, they're so confused as a result of that that they go berserk and end up in institutions like that. So the first lot of paintings that I did were of people in that institutions. So these were portraits of people who were, just schizophrenic or had aspects of delusional behavior, or couldn't really come to grips with life, and their families had to put them in institutions. There was one girl who was constantly waiting for her parents to come and pick her up, and she'd be waiting at the gate of the hospital, and she'd spend 3 months, 4 months, 5 months getting up in the morning, going to the gate, all dressed up, the parents will come. And it wouldn't happen because she really hadn't been adjusted. Well, the series, the Divided Self series, began from there. And then when you looked around, each one of us could say, okay, part of me is mental too, and the part of all the people that you see, they have the same aspects.
Yeah.
So when they have the same aspects, there isn't much difference of a qualitative nature. Quantitative, yes.
Yes, but not qualitative.
But qualitative, not so much.
Fair enough, fair enough.
And that series is really the crux of most of my early work.
No.
You know, and then when I came here, well, this series allowed me to be very introspective or reflective about human nature and how to juxtapose aspects of different moods and behaviors into a psychological profile. When I was with the PTDC, the greatest love I had was of the mountains, and I loved taking tons of photographs and stuff. And then a day came and I said, you know, the camera now is so clever that he's actually running the life of the artist, not the artist running the life of the camera. So I said, okay, forget this now. And I started painting the series. But it took me still 10, 12 years just to keep thinking how to go about it so that it isn't something similar to what other artists do with the scene.
Fair enough. And
found my own language of assembling, you know, whatever it needed to complete a visual. And that began in 1991, and then it stayed all the way. I can't give up something. If I start something,
it has to continue.
And also the last series, last major series that I've been doing is the Crucifixion of Eve. And that's a story where philosophically to me, a woman has suffered far more throughout the ages than has man, and still there's Christ, or there's some figure who's always put on a cross, that he's borne the entire pain and misery of the human soul. To me, I think Eve or a woman has done that more. So I took Christ off the cross and put a woman up there. And here's a painting of that right there.
Okay.
First one. So philosophically to me, it made sense. And consequently, I'd done about 45, 50 paintings just of this series.
Awesome.
But I've not exhibited it because it is a controversial theme and it may hurt some feelings.
Sentiments of certain society.
Consequently,
segments.
You do something because you believe in it.
Fair enough.
But you don't necessarily draw benefit from it if it hurts other people.
And then you need to restrain.
Yeah, you wait for posterity to judge what happens to things like that.
Great. Much as I would like to continue this chat, Rai Sahab, we have paucity of time. But before we sign off, you have achieved so much in your life as a poet, as an artist. I know I've seen people queuing up to get your paintings. You've served the country in tourism and in arts also, heading different positions. You've gotten a doctorate degree, honorary doctorate degree. You've been a gold medalist in journalism. So many disciplines. MashaAllah, a well accomplished, well achieved life. What message would you like to share specifically with the youth of Pakistan? What would you like to say?
And first and foremost, put the country ahead of yourself. Love the roots that you come from and do justice to the best they had to offer. Not the worst. The worst can always be replaced with something better. Okay. Number two, never look for a shortcut.
There is no shortcut in life.
Well, there are shortcuts. People become billionaires with it. But if money is the only goal that you have in mind, then there's something drastically missing from your life. The most fulfilling aspect of life is that you leave something of value for those who follow you in the whole stream of things. A shortcut artist is by and large one who's looking for a material return which is of far less consequence than other spiritual and other aesthetic processes.
Fair enough.
And there's no substitute for learning. You can learn at my stage. You can learn
any age.
Yeah, at any age, absolutely.
They say you learn till you go to your grave.
And first and foremost quality that you need is the humility to know that whatever you know is really next to nothing.
Humility.
And whatever you're able to do can always be a bit better.
Wow.
So consequently, you don't ever give up till you want any more.
Yeah.
That's a fun.
Wow. So basically, own your country, own your identity. We are what we are because of Pakistan. And that's the message most of the guests who, you know, as learned as yourself, share. You have to be humble in life if you want to achieve something, and never stop learning. Learning is an ever continuing aspect. It should be in your life. Right, sir?
Absolutely.
Right, sir, thank you so very much. I wish you all the best. Continue creating more masterpieces, sharing your excellence with others. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much for giving us time. And inshallah ta'ala, I wish you all the best. And I wish that a lot more people benefit from your writings and your art. Thank you so very much. Viewers, with this we come to the end of this episode of Sky is the Limit. I hope you enjoyed it. A very, very frank and candid tete-a-tete with Raja Changez Sultan. Inshallah, I will see you in another episode of Sky is the Limit. Till then,